Hey guys, Jared here, and I've got some bad for me, but at the same time interesting news, I suppose. So I was getting out of my friend's truck the other day, and I had my G3 sitting on my lap, and it slipped off from about 4.5 feet and hit the concrete. Now it landed face down, and I just about had a heart attack. As I reached down to pick it up, I was expecting the display to be shattered, but to my surprise, the screen had not one scratch on it. The top of the phone, however, wasn't so lucky. As you can see, there's some significant dents on the top. Now that was with no case at all, and if that's the sort of damage the G3 can withstand, well then color me impressed. Luckily it's at the top of the phone, so you won't be seeing its battle scars too much in this video, and you can be sure I'll be using a case from now on to not only protect my phone, but also to hide the scars. Anyways, let's get on with the rest of the review. So I wanted to get the physical look and feel out of the way first. Starting from the front, you'll notice the super small bezels wrapping around that nice big 5.5-inch display. The top, where all the battle scars are, simply has the IR blaster for controlling your TV and many other electronics around the house, and of course beside that, a microphone. The bottom has the standard micro USB, but is also where the 3.5mm port is located, which actually is a personal preference of mine, and of course, next to that, another microphone. So the back of the phone is sort of what gives the G3 its edge over other phones in its class. Smack dab in the middle, we've got the camera, volume, and power buttons with the laser autofocus module to the left, and the dual LED flash on the right with the speaker at the very bottom. It's got a nice curve on it, which makes it really comfortable to hold in the hand, and it has this sort of brushed metal look to it, which I think looks really sharp. So long story short, I'm in love with how the G3 looks. So the G3 is a fast phone. It has all the usual suspects that make up what carriers and manufacturers like to call a super phone, which I think is a silly name and needs to stop now. That said, I think one of the most notable hardware features of the G3 is, of course, its display. It's packing a 5.5-inch 2K, or QHD if you prefer, True HD IPS LCD display with a pixel density of 534. I believe it's the same display as featured in the Oppo Find 7 QHD variant. However, I think I prefer the display on the G3. It seems like colors pop maybe just a little bit more, at least to my eyes anyways. The blacks are deep, whites look great, and there's very, very little light leakage. And of course, testing out the display resolution with my favorite cinematographer, Devin Graham, aka Devin Supertramp on YouTube, you can see how it translates even through my camera and your screen just how sharp and clear everything is. So big thumbs up from me on the display. Battery life has been great 90% of the time. So with its removable, yes, I said removable 3000 milliamp hour battery, with my normal everyday usage, I'm always able to get over a full day's usage, even usually into the next day with it ending up on the charger by the afternoon. And by the way, before I go any further into the battery, take note of that expandable micro SD card slot under the hood. So I don't want to hear any more complaints from Samsung fanboys dissing LG for not having a removable battery or card slot. Now, I don't always get that sort of battery life I was just talking about. Sometimes I'll have it on the charger by nighttime. Other times I've had it charged to 100%, unplugged it from the charger as soon as a call came in, talked for an hour, ended the call, and my G3 was still showing 100%. So take that information as you will, but I'm perfectly satisfied with the battery life results. So the camera on this beast is something I'm really impressed with, and I wanted to touch base on not only the camera performance, but also the interface. Now, the main rear-facing camera is 13 megapixels and uses LG's new laser autofocus system. This is one of those things that, believe it or not, isn't a gimmick, but something that actually works really well. Combine that with the optical image stabilization, and you're able to take sharp and, most importantly, in-focus pictures very quickly. So all that said, I've been able to take more in-focus pictures with the G3 than any other phone camera I've ever used. But because the interface has very limited settings and options, in lower lit situations, I did find that the shutter delay value increased to capture as much light as possible, which actually leads to some pretty blurry shots, even with the help of OIS and laser autofocus. Now, as I go through the settings, you'll notice, as I mentioned before, that the options are really quite limited here. What you're seeing right here is what you get, and that's it. The front-facing 2.1 megapixel camera has a pretty neat feature thanks to the camera app. Actually, LG isn't calling it a front-facing camera anymore, it's now called the selfie camera. Just like superphone, I think selfie cam is another word that needs to stop being used right away. Anyways, while using the front camera, you might notice it has an option for flash. Now, it isn't a real flash, obviously, but what it does is minimize the viewfinder and surrounds it with a bright, color-balanced for skin tone border. I mean, it's no LED flash, but hey, it's something and should help while taking, dare I say, selfies. And yes, it can record video in up to 4K, and because we've got OIS, it can take advantage of that too. Basically, I love the camera and really have nothing bad to say about it, except for maybe the lack of manual controls. Now, when it comes to performance, on paper, it looks awesome. It's packing a Snapdragon 801 clocked at 2.5 gigahertz, and when it comes to RAM, because I have the 32 gigabyte version, it comes with 3 gigs of RAM. Otherwise, if you have the 16 gigabyte version, it'll come with only 2 gigs. It has an Adreno 330 GPU, so more than enough for pretty much all games, but with all that, when benchmarked with Antutu, it scored 31,550, which is actually less than the HTC One M8, less than the Samsung Galaxy S5, and believe it or not, less than the LG G2. Now, as I always say, benchmark scores don't dictate real-world usage, but it gives you a pretty good idea of what you're looking at. I mean, if a device scores 10,000 compared to the 31,550 of the LG G3, well, chances are that the device that scored 10,000 is probably a lot slower than the G3. That said, in my experiences with the LG G3's performance, it's been sort of hit or miss. Sometimes it just flies through tasks, and other times there's noticeable stutters, but it's weird. The stutters are still snappy, if that makes any sense. It's really more of a transitional stutter than actual lag. For instance, opening the only folder I have on my home screen, sometimes, not all the time, it looks like a frame drops here and there, but it still opens that folder at lightning fast speeds. I mean, it's not slow at launching apps or when using the task manager to switch between apps and stuff like that, so I'm really not sure what to make of that. I will say this though, I've had the G3 totally freeze up on me more than once, and that was before I dropped it. Now, whether I'm browsing the web or even just in the camera app taking pictures, I've literally had to pull the battery out a couple of times during my experiences. So I'm hoping LG is aware of this and an update will swiftly fix that issue. But all in all, I'm very satisfied with the real world performance of the G3. Now, just before we move on to the software, I wanted to touch base briefly on the 1-watt speaker on the back. Well, on LG's website, they claim it provides loud, articulate music with deep bass. I'm sorry, but no. Loud, yes. Articulate, if they mean that I can understand the lyrics and hear other sounds, okay, yes, I suppose so. But deep bass, no, not even close. The best way I can describe it is that it maybe sounds like what the HTC One would if it only had one speaker and it was placed on the back and without any bass. Now, with regards to the software, LG, in my opinion, has done a phenomenal job updating the look over the previous UX. I've been reading that some people hate it, but I guess there's always going to be some people that have to hate something, right? Anyways, they've gone for a dramatically flatter look than ever before, starting from the lock screen, which can be accessed by either pressing the power button on the back or by double tapping the display. You can access several apps by just pressing and sliding from the shortcuts, which really isn't anything new, but I still love it. The home screen will come flooded with all kinds of crap out of the box, but one of the widgets I really like is the Smart Notice widget. So it can display a bunch of useful info, all of which you can pick and choose from within its settings. I currently have mine set up to tell me the weather, date and time, and to let me know when the phone thinks it can free up some more memory for me. Now, pulling down the notification pane gives us all of our typical power toggles, but the whole thing looks much more clean than in previous LG UX versions, like the one found on the G2, for example. We also have the option to enable the Q-Slide apps for quick access to our most used apps, but I prefer a cleaner look, and so I personally keep it disabled. So just like the Samsung Galaxy line of phones, we have the ability to run 2 apps on the screen at the same time. You can access this by either long pressing on the back button or by jumping into the recent tasks menu and tapping the dual window button. Unfortunately though, we're still limited to the apps we can use based on what LG says is okay. That said, thanks to the magic of rooting and phone modding, I'm sure a mod to use any user-downloaded app is already available. It's just that it would have been nice to have the ability to natively support user-downloaded apps. And just like on the G2, if you don't like the layout of the on-screen buttons, we have the ability to add, remove, or even rearrange certain buttons, but this time the process is a little more customizable. I really like the smart cleaning option. Basically, when I'm bored, I'll pop in here for a moment to see if I can free up any space being used by cache or temp files, and actually I'm usually able to free about, 300 megabytes or more with this useful little tool. All in all, I really like the LG G3. I've been saying this for years, but I am a huge fan of functional simplicity, and I believe the LG G3 is the best example of that when it comes to Android smartphones that I've ever seen. This time, I think LG has done a fantastic job of combining cutting-edge mobile tech with great software and physical features such as the laser autofocus, the 2K display, a removable battery accompanied by expandable SD card slot, and of course, the convenience of the power and volume buttons on the back. I've reviewed all of the major Android smartphones for 2014 so far, but the LG G3 is hands down my favorite for this year. Now, I know the Galaxy Note 4 is still on its way, but even knowing the expected specs of the Note 4, I don't care. The LG G3 is where it's at for me. That wasn't supposed to rhyme at all. Anyways, folks, that's it for this one. I hope you liked this video and found it helpful. If you did, do me a favor and tap that like button. And if you're new here, don't forget to subscribe to stay up to date with all my videos. But thanks as always for watching, and I'll talk to you all in the next one. Cheers.
This video is sponsored by UnlockThatPhone.com. Unlock any phone, any carrier, worldwide. Visit UnlockThatPhone.com for more information.